Welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Hello and welcome back to the show. I am Eoin Devereux, it seems your permanent temporary host of the Banner Press, though I did take a week off last week. And fortunately, from the sounds of it, the two individuals who stepped in did a great job, as they did during my vacation as well. One of them is back again, Casper Wehrhahn, one of our news reporters with the Banner Press. Casper, good to have you back in again this week.
Good to be back and sitting here on the show with you. I can say for sure it definitely went smoother the last time I hosted compared to the first couple times. I think I'm easing into it a bit more now.
Yep. And again, I last week, story behind the story, threw them into the fire. The previous couple weeks ago, I went on vacation, so they had to do it. They knew, they were prepared, they were ready to go. Last week, Thursday morning, when we normally record the show, I was planning on delivering some newspapers to Minnedosa, and I said, all right, I got the energy to either deliver papers to Minnedosa or to do the show. I don't have the energy to do both, so I figured might as well throw them in there. And from the sounds of it, they knocked it out the park, which is good to hear. Very good to hear. So great. And hopefully we're going to be able to bring that same energy this week. Hopefully I'll be able to elevate the game, as it were. I guess we'll find out now. Let's talk about the front page of this week's edition. Something a little unique, something a little different here. And when you take a closer look at it, it really is something I'm very pleased we're able to show you here. 500 single-use grocery bags put to use. Over 40 hours of time and effort put together. This is just tremendous, and we are very pleased. Christine Waddell is the one who showed us this, who took the picture and shared some of the details of this from Linda Ford, an individual who is taking plastic bags and putting them back into good use. Using them to do now I may be wrong on this, crocheting I believe is what it is, because I think that's what it is, it's crocheting. And if I'm wrong on that, I'm sure you will call up and let me know about it. But it's some great craftsmanship that's going on, and hopefully you'll pick up a hard copy and be able to see the pictures, a larger perspective of the pictures. Because me just holding these up right now and showing them to you doesn't give you the full perspective. It's great to see that type of ingenuity and that type of thing going on. What's your take on that, Casper?
Well, it's a very good initiative that she's got going on there. Definitely going to keep her busy. Lots of work to get put in there. But it's nice to see that, something that's typically not able to be reused a whole lot, save for maybe, putting it in your little trash can at the house to take out more garbage. It's getting some really good use out of it. It's always nice to see that. And of course, she is taking more plastic bags right now, so there is information on how you can get those to her on that page. That's
right. And this has nothing to do with the story, but the timing of it was just kind of interesting. I was just speaking to Casper before we went live here about recently I went to a store. I'm not going to say the name because they don't do any advertising with us, so Store X has completely changed over out of plastic bags, so they no longer use plastic bags, which again, kudos to them for finally making that shift over and being environmentally conscious in that way. So we're all going to have to remember from now on to bring our reusable bags. I had not remembered to bring it. I bought like 3 of them a couple weeks ago, and they're all sitting in my kitchen right now. So I'm going to have to remember to always bring one with me in my car whenever I go shopping now, because you want to get into that habit. You really do, because plastic bags hopefully will be a thing of the past. And fortunately, Linda Ford is finding a use for them. And you can find that information right on our front page of this week's edition of the Banner Press. Let's shift attention inside the paper right now. Casper, you got a very interesting story this week about an individual and a business has been an institution for Neepawa for quite some time, but moving on to the next phase, as it were, of their life.
Yeah, this was something that we heard about, I think, like late Friday or something like that, maybe Monday morning. But we got an email about this individual, Murph Kaharski. who is now retiring. Merv owned the custom duct and sheet metal work, also previously known as Merv's Plumbing and Heating, over by the post office there. And yeah, Merv is retiring, made it official on April 30th. And it was a really interesting interview. He kind of went into some of his past, how he got interested in his line of work, and a couple little stories that he remembered from his time getting his start, and little things like that. But I'll leave those for you to read on that page. That's page 12. But a little bit of the history here. Merv bought the shop at that location in 1979 and then had built a new updated shop on that same spot in 1987. Before that, there were two other individuals that used that same space. The first being Walter Matthews and then Dennis Hurl, Dennis being the person that he bought the shop from. Matthews had owned the shop from 1937 to 1954, which was then sold to Dennis Hurl, of course, after which Merv bought from him. So he had his own shop for like 42 years and has had like as many as 5 employees as once, he said. And then, of course, altogether, the business as a whole has really been in the community for about like 84 years. So it's been around for quite some time.
Yeah, that's definitely, and we are all familiar with it. Anytime anyone's picked up their mail, I'm sure they're familiar with it. Some of you have parked in front of their parking spaces. That's not cool. Don't do that. And whoever owns the building next, I'm sure would appreciate it if you don't do that as well. And as I was reading the story, I thought, 1979, that's not that long ago. But then I started doing math, and then I realized, oh yeah, 1979 is a while ago now, isn't it? It's, oh geez, it's all blending together.
Once you start doing the math, it's all over.
Yes. That's the lesson to take from the story. Don't start doing math. It just depresses you after a while. I know it did me momentarily, but definitely want to commend them. I mean, they have been a institution to our business sector for so long, and it's great to be able to sort of share that story the way you did, Casper, with the community. Even if people haven't used the business, they are all familiar with the business. So to be able to sort of give them their send-off in this way, very glad we were able to sort of take that and take the ball and run with it. Kudos on that, Casper.
Absolutely, thank you.
No, great. And you can find that story, as Casper said, on page 12, this week's edition of the Banner and Press. Now, another story I'm very glad that we were able to chase down was a story done this week by Kira Patterson. You can find it on page 2 of this week's paper, and it's about an organization I got to admit I didn't know anything about until I actually read the story and learned about it. Sprucedale Industries. They've opened up a new greenhouse. They're based out of Austin, Manitoba, and they've been around for about, I'm just remembering off the top of my head, I believe in the story it says about 60 years. They are a group that help individuals that deal with disabilities, and they are helping them in so many different facets. And one of these facets is the opening of this new greenhouse, which is going to be opening for the season on Friday, May 7th. So depending on when you're watching this, it may already be open. It's really sort of an interesting concept, an interesting idea to be able to help these clients. They have about, I think, just under 20 clients in total that they assist with this. And these types of things, the greenhouse is a great concept, a great idea, a very relaxing sort of feature, something that, actually I'm going off on a tangent here. My aunt and uncle used to have a greenhouse, obviously much smaller than this one, where we were raised up north, and just you'd walk into the greenhouse even in the winter, and the north has some pretty good winters. You'd walk in there and it'd still be so warm, and the plants would still be sort of thriving. It just had that sense of calming. It really sort of did. So to have something like this, I think, would be just amazing. Mm-hmm. Hopefully when normal becomes normal again, hopefully we're all able maybe to go out and see it for ourselves. I think that would be very, very nice. What's your take on the whole thing, though, Casper?
Oh no, absolutely. It's a very good program. They did have a greenhouse before, but it was sort of like multiple different units, you could say, all put together to form one. But now it's all under one roof, so it's probably a good feeling for them to have all that put together. And just to have that option for something to do is really nice. It keeps you busy, and of course you're out there, you're able to enjoy the fresh air, all the smell of the different plants. It's a very good environment being in greenhouses, and so it's definitely something that is of a benefit in multiple different ways.
That's right. And what was really nice about this as well is, God, everything is more expensive nowadays, including greenhouses. It was around $120,000 because it is a large. You'll see the picture on page 2. It is a vast amount of space that they do have right now. So that does cost money, but several local organizations, Austin and surrounding regions, that see the value from Sprucedale Industries and what they do for people within those communities. They saw the value of it and donated a large portion to be able to cover that cost. So commend them. Definitely like to see when businesses see these types of values within their own community and see the positivity of donating in that way. So it's a wonderful story. Very glad Hero was able to sort of bring that story to us. And you can check that out. That's on page 2 of this week's newspaper. Now, we're going to try and get through this next 2 stories as quickly as we can because it's a lot of numbers. And as we said earlier, when you start doing math, you get depressed. But don't worry. For the towns of Neepawa and the town of Minnedosa, these numbers we're going to be talking about right now aren't all that depressing. In fact, they're actually pretty darn good. If you turn to page 3, travel and entertainment section, because what's more entertaining than math? Really?
Oh man, I can't think of anything. No ideas whatsoever.
Well, there's nothing more entertaining than math except for everything. And actually, here's the story behind the fact that the town of Neepawa's municipal budget story is on page 3, our travel and entertainment page, because you don't have to travel that far when it comes to the budget. And the budget's not that entertaining, let's be honest. But this week's paper was so jam-packed. 20 pages, and we had our plan in place. And then the last minute, maybe an hour before we were going to finalize things, Ken Waddell, the owner and operator of the Neepawa Banner Press, came forward and said, guys, did you remember the full-page ad on the back that was talking about the upcoming 125th anniversary of the Neepawa Press? And we all just sort of blinked for a moment and went, huh? What? Who? What? It turns out we ended up having one less page for news than we normally would have. But again, this is something very, very important, and it is coming up later this month. So hopefully some businesses will get involved with that. But we ended up having a lot less space, so we ended up having to crunch some stuff into a more restrictive area. And we had to make some creative changes. And one of the creative changes was we had some space on travel and entertainment, and we had no space on any other page to be able to put this news story. And all right, don't tell Ken. Keep this just between us. But that's one of the annoying things about the paper sometimes. The first 6 pages are all sort of restricted to certain genres, and that's great sometimes. Obviously, the editorial pieces on page 4 and page 5, very important. Helen's, one of our most popular. We always like to keep Helen's Kitchen on page 6 because it is so popular and so beloved in the community. Whenever I do my editorial, we try and keep that consistently on page 6, just that people sort of get used to the routine. But then that means 3, 4, 5, 6 are all sort of accounted for. And then you have Rural Outlook on page 7, and then you have Looking Back usually on page 8. That means almost your entire front half of the paper is with sort of in fixed items that are there each and every week, which is good sometimes, but when you have major stories of significance, you want to give them preference. You don't want to bury them, as it were. And part of that as well is you might ask yourself, why don't you just put it on page 2? Page 2 is a color page as well, and we like to save the color pages for interesting visuals. That's why you'll see the Sprucedale story on page 2, because it's got the interesting visual to go with it. And quite honestly, you know, the only picture we'd have from budget is a bunch of people sitting around a table, you know, talking, and that's not a visually interesting picture. So that's a little bit of the secrets behind the scenes when it comes to designing a paper. We don't just willy-nilly throw them on the page, even though it seems like that sometimes. But yeah, maybe, do you want to sort of add anything to that, Casper? I've been sort of meandering on the point for a minute or two. Let me throw to you on that before we even talk about the story.
No, I mean, that's exactly it, really. Like, you know, we, as a paper, we want to be very consistent where we're putting things, because, you know, consistency as a whole is just, it's nice. Whenever you have a brand, you want to make sure that all of your logos and whatnot are consistent. And it's the same thing with the paper, our pages there. We want to keep things as much as possible in the same spot. That's why whenever we have our current Manitoba Pork community news page, we always try and have it on page 12, just so things, you know, stay consistent. People expect it. They don't have to, you know, look around and be like, oh, where is it this time? Like, it was on this page last week. Why isn't it on a different page this week? You know, you want to make sure that people know where to find stuff. So it's nice in that way, but absolutely, for sure, it can kind of be a little bit frustrating sometimes, because we really want to put those big stories up front as much as possible, but sometimes, you know, we just can't do that. We only have so much space, because we need our big story on page 1, and then we have, you know, whatever carryover if we need from that page onto page 2, and then maybe we can fit like 1 or 2 more things, depending what's all on there for ads. And then, you know, the next few pages after that are taken up. We have to, you know, we have to put the relevant things on there, but, you know, we get it done. We try and figure things out the best we can. Yep.
Like this week's an example as well. The front page is in regards to Linda Ford and her work. We put that on there because of all the stuff we have this week. This was the most visually interesting item. In terms of direct impact to people of Neepawa, the budget might be the most important item because it affects your wallet. It affects your purse. But it's not a very interesting visual story. So putting it on the front page and having nothing to go with it, it just sort of, you got the steak, but you got no sizzle.
Yeah,
you know?
It feels very blah.
Yep. But again, that's just sort of my little side track there, is the reasoning why we have it on page 3. But whether it's on page 3 or page 33 or page 303, God, that would be a lot of work if we had a 303-page paper.
I don't even want to think about having to put together a 300-page paper. I think we got enough.
Yeah. That would be a heck of a good week, though.
Oh, it sure would be. I think we'd be our feet afterwards, covering all those stories. We wouldn't be able to feel them.
Yeah. It'd be like, God, can't we coast on this paper for a couple weeks? No, we gotta. As soon as one's paper is done, we got to get started on the next one. No breaks. No sleep. But, all right, let's get back to the actual stories, the reason we're here and the reason we're talking about it. The town of Neepawa has passed second and third reading on the 2021 municipal budget. And this, quite honestly, is a budget I think if you are a property owner, if you are a ratepayer in this town, you're going to be happy with it. Because not only does upgrades and improvements to the infrastructure of the town of Neepawa continue to move forward in a major way, but it's not happening out of your pocket right now. The mill rate, which essentially is the formula they come up with to decide how much money is taken from your property taxes, is staying status quo for the second year in a row. That means no increase to your taxes. Which is a good thing, and they did this specifically on purpose. Mayor Blake McCutcheon said council and administration talked about this. They felt the situation with the pandemic on COVID-19, They wanted to ease the tension. They wanted to ease the situation for people in any way, shape, or form they could. And this is an example of that. They're able to take money from reserves. They're able to take money from other portions of the budget to sort of look after these types of things. And again, the one thing is, the biggest item on here is really the police station. We've talked about that previously on the show, and we have explained what's happening. They have an agreement in place with the RCMP where they're going to be able to take care of that. It's a very positive sort of situation happening for the town of Neepawa, where we're getting a building that we desperately need, and very much are looking forward to seeing shovels in the ground and work happening on that. That's the type of progress you like to see from a community. That's the type of forward thinking and forward momentum that you want from your community. And again, there's other things in there as well. You can check out the story. It is on, as we said, page 3. And the story we had on it a couple weeks ago explained some of the other things that are going on with upgrades. Overall, I think it's a pretty good one for the town of Neepawa. But Casper, two people who don't pay property taxes are going to talk about property taxes right now, because I rent, and you rent, I believe, or you have family.
Yeah, staying with family right now. So I rent, but not kind of. I pay grocery money, and I'm saving up money to one day, get my own place again, as expensive as that is going to be.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the type of thing, though, is you want to save every penny, and this is the type of budget that helps to save every penny if you're a resident in Neepawa. Meanwhile, just a little further down the road, heading west towards the town of Minnedosa, they finalized their budget. It was about a week earlier than Neepawa finalized theirs, but they're both in this week's papers. Minnedosa has finalized theirs. Their budget is set at just over $11 million. Now that sounds like a big amount of money for the town of Minnedosa, but it's part of it has to do with the arena. Now, when I first went through all the paperwork, I thought, does that mean they're finally going to start building the arena? No, not exactly. It's factored into the budget so that if provincial and federal commitments and grants come through, they could move on that if they wanted in a moment's notice. It's accounting sort of stuff, because the budget itself really, they did the same thing last year. They set aside $10.4 million last year, but they actually only spent around $4.3 million to cover what needed to be covered. And it's the same thing this year. It's $11 million. Hopefully, maybe they'll be lucky. Maybe the feds, maybe the province will come through with that money finally to help with the arena plan they have already in place and ready to go at a moment's notice. Maybe it won't be this year, but if they get the opportunity, they will have the chance to move forward on that. But nonetheless, they still have a lot of improvements they're going to be doing. A lot of road upgrades and curb upgrades. They had Casper, they had the flood last year, which was a big impact. They really busted the place up a lot, didn't
yeah, that was it was quite a time last year for sure, for like the entire area pretty much surrounding Neepawa. And Minnedosa was hit pretty hard by all of that, so there's a lot of damage and cleanup to do after that. But I hope that they are able to get some stuff going this year. Yeah,
definitely. Mayor Paskatch was very pleased. She said she felt that this was a responsible budget for the times we are currently in, and I got to agree with that as well. We talked a little earlier about the mill rate for Neepawa was staying status quo. Mill rate for Minnedosa up slightly, but it's not that impactful, quite honestly. It's a little teeny tiny increase. It essentially comes out to about $2 per $100,000 of property value. So if you own a home in Minnedosa that's worth $300,000, you're going to be paying around $6 extra in property taxes. So an extra a burger, fries, and a Coke. You're going to have to give away a burger, fries, and a Coke. That's it. calm down. It's going to be okay. So it's a good budget. Very pleased to be able to share those numbers with you for Minnedosa and Neepawa. All right, next up, we got Ken Waddell's column. Every single week, Ken's got opinions, whether you agree with them or not. As usual, as of late, he's talking about COVID-19. He's talking about the situation in Manitoba. And there's a few things he says in there that I agree with. It's a little frustrating. Everybody's dealing with the frustration here. Everybody's dealing with frustration because the province doesn't seem to know what's happening one week to the next. Everybody's just sort of, we're a little tired. And he understands why people are going through that. Casper, let me throw to you though. What was your takeaway from what Ken had to say this week?
Not a whole lot. I mean, he's gone on this sort of topic quite a few times, but I did highlight one little thing at the end here. And we did talk about this in the office afterwards and kind of like went over the whole details of like what this stuff actually means. But in the column here, Ken says that the irony of the vaccine is that the best vaccines guarantee around 97% protection, and says that that's 3% chance that you will still get COVID-19 even if you're vaccinated, and only 3% of the population, according to his calculations, have gotten COVID-19 in the past 15 months of the pandemic anyway. And yes, and again, we did go over this after the paper was published as well. That 97% protection, that's it, trying to prevent you from getting COVID-19. The rest of the 3% there with the immunization is supposed to help you, even if you do get it, to not have as severe of a time with COVID-19. It'll hopefully, keep you from having the severe effects that we have seen out there. Maybe not, you won't have a death, you won't perhaps get as severe of a hospitalization. Hopefully no hospitalization at all, but you'll definitely feel a little bit sick. But
yeah.
That vaccine, even though it doesn't have 100% protection, and things don't necessarily do have 100% protection, but it's supposed to make your time a lot easier if you do get sick. So that's what that's all about.
That's right. Ken's column, as always, it appears on page 4 of the Banner Press. You can check that out, whether you agree, whether you disagree. We want to hear your opinions, as always. And the same thing, every month I do a column like I see them. Little play on words there. And this week, I talk about Bill C-10. Federal government is going through some regulatory changes with the Broadcasting Act. And I disagree with some of the things they've done as of late. They have removed some wording from it that adds some vagueness to the situation. The Broadcasting Act in its purest sense, though, is a positive thing. It helps broadcasters in Canada. It secures them. It evens the playing field between a Canadian broadcaster and streaming services and companies like Netflix, like Disney+, because that's an unfair playing field right now. Quite honestly, the streaming services are not contributing and not paying their fair share. But the removal of a certain section of it makes things a little bit vague. And everybody's up in arms about this because there's certain requirements for television and radio in Canada to make it quote-unquote Canadian. And those requirements might fall on internet usages and social media. It's a little simplistic on that, and again, a lot of people online compared it to China. Let's not go overboard. It's not China, but again, it makes the situation grayer than it needed to be. It was put in there for a reason, and it was taken out for a reason. And I wish the government had done a better job of explaining why. We are running tight on time, unfortunately, so we can't go too in-depth into it. I'm sure you at home are going, oh, thank goodness. But as always, we thank you, and Casper, I thank you for sitting in on the chair this week.
Always good to be here, and I look forward to appearing again in another week.
That's right, and we thank you for sitting in with us. If you have opinions or thoughts on any of the things we write, or story suggestions, contact us, 476-3401, or get in touch with us via email at news at neepawabanner.com. We'd love to hear from you, whether you agree, whether you disagree. We love that type of banter. So for Casper, I am Eoin, and we'll see you next week on the Story Behind the Stories.